What is conflict theory? Let's talk about it on Kyle Talks Money. Conflict theory is a socio-political theory that originated with Karl Marx. It seeks to explain political and economic events in terms of an ongoing struggle over finite resources. In this struggle, Marx emphasizes the antagonistic relationship between the social classes, in particular the relationship between the owners of capital, whom Marx called the bourgeoisie, and the working class, which he called the proletariat. Conflict theory had a profound influence on 19th and 20th century thought and continues to influence political debates to this day. Conflict theory holds that social order is maintained by domination and power, rather than by consensus and conformity. According to the conflict theory, those with wealth and power try to hold on to it by any means possible, chiefly by suppressing the poor and powerless. A basic premise of conflict theory is that individuals and groups within society will work to try to maximize their own wealth and power. But let's first understand what conflict theory really is. It's sought to explain a wide range of social phenomena including wars, revolutions, poverty, discrimination, and domestic violence. It describes most of the fundamental developments in human history, such as democracy and civil rights to capitalistic attempts to control the masses. Central tenets of conflict theory are the concepts of social inequality, the division of resources, and the conflicts that exist among different socio-economic classes. The central tenet of conflict theory can explain many types of societal conflicts throughout history. Some theorists believe, as Marx did, that societal conflict is the force that ultimately drives change and development in society. Marx's version of conflict theory focused on the conflict between two primary classes. Each class consists of a group of people bound by mutual interests and a degree of property ownership. Marx theorized about the bourgeoisie, a group that represented members of society who hold the majority of the wealth and means. The proletariat is the other group. It includes those considered working class or poor. With the rise of capitalism, Marx theorized that the bourgeoisie, a minority within the population, would use their influence to suppress the proletariats, the majority class. This way of thinking is tied to a common image associated with conflict theory based on models of society. Adherents to this philosophy tend to believe in a pyramid arrangement in terms of how goods and services are distributed in society. At the top of the pyramid is a small group of elites that dictate terms and conditions to the larger portion of society because they have an outsized amount of control over resources and power. Uneven distribution within society was predicted to be maintained through ideological coercion. The bourgeoisie would force acceptance of the current conditions by the proletariat. Conflict theory assumes that the elite would set up systems of laws, traditions, and other societal constructures in order to further support their own dominance while preventing others from joining their ranks. Marx theorized that as the working class and poor were subjugated to worsening conditions, a collective consciousness would raise more awareness about inequality, and this would potentially result in revolt. If after the revolt conditions were adjusted to favor the concerns of the proletariat, the conflict circle would eventually repeat, but in the opposite direction. The bourgeoisie would eventually become the aggressor and revolter, grasping for the power of the structure that formerly maintained their dominance. So let's look at some examples of conflict theory. There's a relationship between a housing complex owner and a tenant as being mainly based on conflict instead of balance or harmony, even though there may be more harmony than conflict. They believe that they are defined by getting whatever resources they can from each other. In that example, some of the limited resources that may contribute to conflict between tenants and the complex owner includes a limited space within the complex, the number of units, the money that tenants pay to the complex owner for rent, and so on. Ultimately, conflict theorists see this dynamic as one of the conflicts over these resources. The complex owner, however gracious, is fundamentally focused on getting as much apartment units filled as possible as they can make as more money in rent as possible, especially if bills such as mortgages and utilities must be covered. This may introduce conflict between housing complexes among tenants applicants looking to move into apartments, and so forth. On the other side of the conflict, the tenants themselves are looking to get the best apartment possible for the least amount of money in rent. The financial crisis of 2008 is a good example of real-life conflict theory. They viewed the financial crisis as an inevitable outcome of the inequalities and instabilities of the global economic system, which enabled the largest banks and institutions to avoid government oversight and take huge risks that only reward a select few. Large banks and big businesses subsequently received bailout funds from the same government that claimed to have insufficient funds for the large-scale social programs such as universal healthcare. This dichotomy supports a fundamental assumption of conflict theory, which is that mainstream political institutions and cultural practices favor dominant groups and individuals. This example illustrates that conflict can be inherent in all types of relationships, including those that don't appear on the surface to be antagonistic. It also shows that even a straightforward scenario can lead to multiple layers of conflict. So do you believe in what Karl Marx calls conflict theory? Comment your thoughts below. And as always, take care of your money.